Okay, hello. We're going to dive into writing. I'm going to spend a couple weeks about writing skills. And before you think, oh, writing's so horrible, if you want to be successful in wildlife biology, conservation, I don't care if it's at whatever level, you need to be able to write. Number one, getting that job, right? How are you going to write your CV, your cover letter, reaching out to these potential internships? And then, when you're in your career, if you are a research scientist or something, of course, you already know the value of writing. But do you think you're a good writer? How can you get better at writing? So today's lesson is about writing those research papers or a publication or something like that has data behind it. This is also for you that read those papers. Now, again, if you're in any area of wildlife conservation, you should be reading scientific papers, whatever level you're at. If you have a question about something in your area, you should be going to the literature to find answers to those things or to see where those holes are. So this also helps in how you read and you interpret those scientific findings. So many students come to me with writer's blocks, like they just don't get started. And I totally get that. I was there, it's still in there, but now I have a strategy that I'm going to share with you of how to make that process easier. Okay. And also we'll just give you momentum so that you keep going. Is to not just start at the title, and do not start at the intro. Do not start with the abstract. How do you know what you're introducing until you have your data set, right? So this is an easier way to start writing because it takes that out of your mind of like, this has to be the first part of your paper really does have to be catching and add value. You can't do that really until you really are in it and are really in the place of your data and basically having something to say. What's that one sentence take home? I don't care if it's a 1 week study or a 10-year study, you have that one take home message that needs to be portrayed in those first few sentences. So back up, don't even try that at the moment. So I always advise my students to start with the materials and methods, right? What this does, it gets you started with action. You're writing what you have done, or maybe if this is a proposal, you're writing what you're going to do, okay? So this doesn't take that level of thinking of trying to interpret and add value and all of that at the same time. This is what it is, right? This is a perfect place to start. So methods and materials. So you're, explaining your study design, your treatments, and everything depending on what you're writing, not materials and methods, okay? So if you're writing, that's what you're gonna do first. The next thing you're gonna do, and kind of at the same time, is you start at your results. So you're gonna do your methods and materials and your results first. And this is a series, depending on the publication and the needs. I know there's some variation here. You need to be able to visually represent your major findings or your major goals, okay? Visual things are so powerful. And I tell you, as a reader, and I bet when you go look through the scientific literature, or if you're looking for information on something, you're looking for those graphs, you're looking for those figures. And so to reverse that, if that's how you look and study things, that's how you should be offering them. So I call it these, even if you don't have your data yet. So I call it these skeleton tables. So either, they're skeletons, so they don't have all of the data and all of the meat to them, right? So these are just, this figure or this graph is going to represent this, okay? And this one is going to represent this. That gives you an overall story of your paper or of your research or of your proposal. It's a visual representation of what the writing is then going to clarify. That's how I read things. That's how I teach my students to read things. It's go to the visuals first, get a good idea, and then you go to the actual writing for clarification and details. So you need to think that when you're writing, right? Is your story or whatever you're writing portrayed really well in those visuals, okay? So materials and methods will just get you going. You don't have to fill it all out. And typically if you're writing a paper, it'll ask you the different sections to have in there. Start writing that out. That's easy to do. It gets you going. Action leads to more action. The hardest part is starting, okay? So get some wins under your belt. Also know that a draft, your first time you write something, don't feel stuck to it. Give yourself permission to brain dump and put that draft out there, knowing it's not going to be perfect. Start writing, okay? This is how you become a better writer. So again, so you're going to start the materials and methods, and you're going to start at the data part, the results section, those visual figures around it, okay? This will lead to action. And then when that's done, or you have a good brain dump on it and a good draft on it, now you know what the heck you're introducing, right? You can't introduce something unless you fully understand the take-home message, which is found in your results, okay? So step back a minute and don't start at the intro. Don't start at the abstract. The abstract is actually the last thing that you're going to do, okay? Because that's going to summarize everything. You don't have everything if you start at the abstract. So, okay. So that was just a little bit of my advice on writing for scientific research. When you're reading papers, I advise you do that as well. So you go to those results section and then you use the wording and the writing to look for clarification. And I then challenge you to then go look at the abstract and see the abstract will read so much easier to you. You will understand it so much better if you have a picture, a story of that paper or whatever based on those figures beforehand. It'll make so much more sense. You'll understand what this group was working at, what they were doing. Okay, so that's my advice. Last piece before we leave, because writing, I guess I'll just end with a quick story about how writing has influenced my career. And I have to tell you, it's one of the primary things, like my strengths, that has enabled me to have a lot of freedom and joy in my career is because of my ability to write. This was not a natural ability. This took me lots and lots and lots of practice, because I'm also very embarrassed to go back to my previous writings, even in undergrad. I'm like, that is so embarrassing. Like I would never, yeah. But anyway, I guess that means I grew and I improved, thank goodness, because that was just fairly terrifying. But yeah, so I was able to write well enough to have success with grant applications, so that I was able to basically make my job as an elephant reproductive physiologist, endocrinologist, not just elephants anymore, but wildlife. And that was because, I was able to fundraise in a way and write about what I was studying and wanted to study to granting agencies. Those were successful, and that enabled me to work for the different facilities and what I do. And that's how it started, is because no matter how awesome of a researcher or scientist or wildlife biologist, you have to have these writing skills. Not only able to write, be able to interpret writing so that then you can apply that, right? That's what you're doing in this field, is you're using knowledge and you're building knowledge and you're applying knowledge. And so your ability to write and to interpret writing is so critical. I don't care what stage you're at. So the power of writing has enabled me to create and build a career that I just love and more based on what I feel is right for me. And that was because I could write. And I also have to say, last thing, I always say last thing, but I don't feel like you guys, whoever's listening, needs this. So I also learned to write a lot of writing when I was outside of this field. So for a while, I stepped away because I was deciding between my master's and PhD. How I was going to do my PhD, because it was going to require me to move across the country and all of this. I'll get into that another time, and some of you already know that story. So I worked at an animal biotech company for a while, which, I was doing the research on making vaccines, animal vaccines. But I had to write, right? I write the reports, and that's really where I really practice my writing skills. And I realized how powerful writing was. And it doesn't have to be a topic that you love, right? It's just the art of it. You have to dive into it and see what works, look at other writing, pick it apart. Just because it's published doesn't mean it's perfect, right? So just be a student of writing. And so I really practiced that art when I wasn't even in the wildlife realm. So I have to say, even if you're not there, if you feel like I'm not a wildlife biologist, I just want to listen to these because I want to be one. Being one takes being a good writer at so many levels. So if you want to go in this field, if you're in this field, you know that your writing skills have got to be on. Last thing, I promise now this time, is you got to practice. You got to practice and practice and practice. And that means having a brain dump and just starting, right? And knowing that your first draft will never be the last. So I also challenge you to never submit something that you just write on the first time, okay? Because you just need to get that out first, and then you go and restructure it and not perfect it. We're not going for perfection necessarily, but that's the only way you can edit something is if you have something to edit. So, okay, that was my lesson on writing and my advice on diving in and getting and how you can best start that process and where you should start so that at the end of it, you have something you're really proud of and that makes sense, right? You're trying to give value to our industry, to society, to the world, and you give value by making something understandable. You don't want to get to line 3 and nobody reads it. Nobody even gets to your results, right? So you start there, understand that, and then you can talk about it thoroughly. Okay, that was it. Have a great week. Thanks for being here as always. I'm going to start probably in January a writer's boot camp. So this will be fun. And this is a time for you, if you have that project, you have that, you just want some cover letter help, you have a paper, you have a publication, this is going to be me giving tips and skills and advice. And then we're going to break out into groups and spend 25 minutes writing and then come back in and sharing. So that'll be pretty fun. So, okay, have a great week. And as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to animals, be kind to the planet. And see you next week.